American author and philosopher Sam Kean wrote, "We come to love not by finding a perfect person, but by learning to see an imperfect person perfectly." That theme is deeply embedded in Parshat Noach. Let me explain. Many pre-biblical civilizations had stories of a massive deluge that swept across the earth. Despite 1,000 degrees of separation of time and geography, they share similar characteristics: an angry god or gods, a protagonist who is directed to build a boat, or who hears a great flood is coming and builds a structure to save himself, a frightful storm, the proverbial calm after the storm, the release of birds to determine when there was dry land, sacrifices of thanksgiving, and often the wife of the protagonist. Generally, the gods' reason for destruction was whimsical, including that the noise humankind was making was disturbing their sleep. In no flood myth other than ours do we find a God who craves relationship and humankind. God was tormented by this unrequited love. In Noah's generation, God saw the earth, and it was filled with wrongdoing, and God grieved deeply, regretting ever having created humankind. And God said, "I will blot out humankind whom I have created from the face of the soil." Noah was not evil. He was righteous in his time. Noach matzeh chen be'enei Adonai, and Noah found favor in God's eyes. Ours is a God of compassion, who was able to recognize Noah's limitations as well as his strengths. God gave specific instruction for building and filling the ark, and Torah tells us repeatedly, Noah did it. According to all that God commanded him, so he did. God saw Noah, and God knew how to speak to him in ways he could hear and understand. God, not humankind, is the source of survival and human growth in this story. Parshat Noach teaches us we come to love not by finding a perfect person, but by learning to see an imperfect person perfectly. Noah is again introduced, this time with words that seem straightforward, but actually bring another layer of confusion about the character of Noah and the nature of his relationship with God. Ela taldot Noah, Noach ish tzadik, tamim haya b'doratav, et ha'Elohim hitchalech Noach. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was righteous, was a righteous man, a tzaddik. He was blameless in his age. Noah walked with God. The word tzaddik can be problematic when attached to Noah. It is even more striking because Noah is the only person in all of Torah who is given that title. Commentators struggle to understand why. His spiritual life and overall character were less than stellar. He is what I call a pre-Jew. He had not received Torah and was not liable to answer to the ethical demands. V'Noah matzah chen be'enei Adonai, but Noah found favor in God's eyes. Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik wrote that each of us is a messenger b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. We have a mission, a purpose we are intended to fill on earth. Quote, "The fact that someone lives in a certain time, in a specific era, in a defined place, and was not born in a different period and in other circumstances can be understood if we accept the essential concept that every human is a messenger for God, put on earth with a specific purpose." Close quote. If we see something is broken and we know how to fix it, we must do so. That was the case for Noah with a slight twist. It was not Noah, but God who saw something broken. God would destroy humankind and with it all the earth. God would fix the world, having Noah, his family, and all the creatures in the ark with whom to repopulate the earth. Noah did not have the character to be a leader. He didn't have a passion for justice in his heart like Abraham did. But God recognized Noah was capable of building God's ark exactly as God wanted. Although God's heart was broken, Noah had the skills that could help it mend. Perhaps he was called a tzaddik because he was in the right place at the right time and was able to complete the task for which he was created. We come to love not by finding a perfect person, but by learning to see an imperfect person perfectly. Parshat Noah is in Torah because sometimes we are Noah. We do our jobs, but can be unaware of what those around us need. We understand a primary privilege and responsibility of humankind is to draw God into the world with acts of loving kindness, but our days are full and our time is limited. If we are able to access God's grief through our own experiences with heartbreak, we will open ourselves to a world of possibility. When we witness God almost giving up on all of God's creation, we learn the power of persisting when there is no reason for hope. We have learned in recent months it is not easy and definitely not advisable to permanently disengage from the horrors of the world. Torah urges us to resist that temptation. In this parsha, God teaches us the significance of resilience through relationship, the infinite value of seeing, hearing, and feeling each other. And God shows us it is possible to come back, even from paralyzing despair. We come to love not by finding a perfect person, but by learning to see an imperfect person perfectly. Ribono Shel Olam, Creator of all life, help us learn to love perfectly our imperfect selves and each other. Help us be open to the world of possibility and hope. Shabbat Shalom.